Alright, welcome back. So the last two videos were about the first part of the decimation process in our MAD-T workflow. So remember, we have modeling, automation, decimation, triangulation. We're focusing on decimation right now. And decimation, like I mentioned earlier on, has two sub-levels to it. For decimation, all you need to do is one, remove the bakeable elements, which we've done in the last two videos, and the second part is to reduce the bevel segments, which we're going to discuss in this video. This is actually super easy, shouldn't take too long at all. Now, if you watched Ryu's modeling videos for this gun, his process videos, and it's like a bonus for the course, if you watch those, you'll notice that for all his bevels, he used an even segment. And there was a very specific reason for that. And I'll just kind of recap it here. So whenever you run a bevel, you're going to notice that if you press Control B and you scroll up and down, if you look at the bottom, there's a segment count. See where my cursor is? Right below it, there's a segment count. Say I scroll up to 8. You always want this number to be even, and I'll show you why. And if you already know why, then you're just going to get the same info repeated, but it's always good to reinforce that. So if this is set to an even segment, I can always dissolve out every other edge here with Control X. These edges here are very important because they hold the mesh together. If I were to dissolve one of these edges out, notice how it kind of flattens out a bit. We don't want that. We want these to hold. These are the supporting edges for our bevel. So this is why I always recommend using even segments, because if you were to use an odd segment, so maybe 7, if you try to dissolve it out, you're always going to hit that holding bevel. So just a recap on that one. Fortunately, the gun has been designed in that way, so now what we need to do is reduce the segment count of our bevels. Now, we're just going to go to this piece here to start with. If I tab into edge mode, you're going to see that we have quite a few here we could work on. So I'm just going to Alt-Shift-Click, and you're going to see we can Control X to dissolve those out. And you could do another level of decimation, but you don't want to go too far, because if you go too far, it begins to look kind of faceted, which we don't want. So I'm not going to go down too far. Now you might also be wondering, why do we even bother using more segments? Why don't we just use like 5 to begin with so we don't have to decimate this down? There's a few reasons. One, you might make a model with zero intention of it becoming a game asset, and then maybe later on a client comes to you or something and wants it to be a game asset. You'll have the ability to go back and optimize it. Number 2 is if you bake a rounder bevel, a smoother bevel, onto a less smooth bevel like this, you'll actually get very, very clean results that I've seen in my experience. So it does take a bit more time dissolving down these bevels, but it's always worth it because of the quality. Now on steeper bevels like this, you're going to notice that you could actually get away with dissolving this down even further because the faceting isn't as obvious. Notice how it doesn't really facet as much as if we did it on these harder bevels. So that's another thing you can do. You can always decimate this down a bit lower for these types of angles. So for the main bevels on your models, you always want to go in here and just dissolve them down with Control X. Right up until you begin to get faceted behavior. So I could probably go to about here. You're going to see it does become a little bit faceted. Kind of depends on, how much you care. No one's going to really notice. So you could either go for this one with lower count or lower poly count, or you could go for something a bit more smooth here that has a bit more polygons. Kind of up to you. Same for this area. I could just go through and Alt-Shift-Click. We could dissolve this down, Control X, still looks okay. We could try doing another level, but I think this one will be a bit too faceted. Yep, you're going to see it's a little bit too blocky, so I'm just going to leave it there. So this is basically the process we're going to take for the entire model. It's really easy, and you only have to do one side on pieces that are symmetrical, so either you would symmetrize with Alt-X, or if you have a mirror modifier on the model already, you don't really have to do anything. Cool, so that's basically the process we're going to be using. So I'm going to end the video here, and I'm going to do one more recap video after this, and then what we're going to do is pull it all together, combine these two workflows together, and decimate down this entire model. It'll be really easy to do, and this is the same exact workflow that you would apply on any of your own hard surface models. So I'll see you in the next video. Alright, so welcome back. We're going to do one more recap video on the bevel segment decimation, and then we're going to completely redo this gun from scratch because you should have all the information you need in your tool belt. So let's just do a few more examples here for how you can decimate down rounder areas or bevels, and then you should be good to go. Alright, so let's maybe take this piece right here. This is not technically a bevel really, but it is a round element, so we could dissolve it down. So first of all, let me get rid of some of these loops here. We don't really need those for anything, so we could dissolve those out and dissolve this one out and dissolve that one out. So you could see, like on this one for example, we could easily go around, just Alt-Shift-Click, Control-X, and then same for the inside. We could just select all these edges and then Control-X. And then if you go into object mode, you can just symmetrize over like that. So you could do that with rounder elements as well. I would not decimate this down anymore because if we do, it's going to look super, super blocky. As you can see, it actually didn't even work because of how blocky that would become. So yeah, you want to be careful. You don't want to go down too far. Otherwise, you'll get these really weird collapsing issues here. It's just not going to look good, right? Okay, so we'll just go ahead and leave that one as is. Let's go to another area of this model, maybe this piece. Actually, no, I think this one would be a better demonstration. So I'm not talking about baking right now, so obviously you could bake these two elements right here. I'm just focusing on the bevels for now, but you know, if you were to be doing the full process, which we're going to cover in the next video, what you would do first is you would simply get rid of the stuff you can bake, right? So we could just merge all this together. Same for over here. Merge it center. And then merge it center. Right? So you could, easily do the baking stuff first. And then after you're done with the baking stuff, you could go over to your bevels. So for example, we could decimate those down a bit. We could maybe decimate these down a bit. Looks good. Same for under here. We could do a few decimations there, a few decimations here, a few decimations here, and then a few decimations here. Super easy stuff. I also want to point out something. Sometimes if you decimate too far, you might end up getting double bevels. If that happens, simply change the angle in the bevel modifier. Just increase it a little bit, and then it should catch, no problem. Same for right here, we have a double bevel going on because of the bevel modifier. Just gotta adjust that angle a bit. So either you can adjust the angle or you decimated down too far. In this case, adjusting the angle was fine. I don't see any additional problems. And then of course we would just make the bevel segment count set to 1 for reasons we mentioned before. And there we go. I'll also disable keep sharp in the weighted normal modifier. Cool. Now there's one last thing I want to point out that I think will be pretty useful for you as well. Let me maybe take this element right here. So instead of going all the way around each and every time and having to select all the way around, what you could do is you could simply go into wireframe, box select all the edges, and then simply use a checkered deselect option. What I like to do is assign a shortcut for this. So for me, I just assigned a shortcut to Control Q. You would right click, assign shortcut. I made mine Control Q, which is the default for quitting Blender, but who wants to quit Blender? So you would do that. And then you could literally go in here and press Control Q, Control X, and it saves you a lot of time. So that's a pretty cool trick as well. You have to be careful though, because as you can see, there's still some elements here that we ended up missing, and sometimes you'll have to pick those up manually, unfortunately. But that's just one trick I wanted to show you, because it can save you quite a bit of time, because whenever you want to drop a bevel down, you just box select, Control Q. If you get the wrong selection, you just offset it, and then Control X. It's really easy. Okay, awesome. So we discussed the two main ways to decimate. Number one is to remove areas that can be baked, and number two is to reduce the bevel segment counts, which we did in this video and in the last one. Now in the next video, I'm going to show you the complete process for decimating down this entire weapon. This is where we're going to really pull everything together. This video will be a lot longer, but I would highly recommend you watch the entire thing because it's going to really reinforce these concepts and show you additional solutions if some weird issues ever come up. So I hope this helped. It's really easy. Decimation only has 2 steps, so in the next video we're going to go over the entire process for the whole gun, so we'll just start from scratch. So just to recap the last video, what we did was we took this little piece here and we decimated it down. We went to the flat surfaces, we looked for pieces we could remove on those flat surfaces, and we removed them. But like I said, you have to be careful because some of these areas can cause issues, such as that line effect that we got when I showed you the baking demonstration. So this video is going to be basically the same thing we did in the last one, but it's going to be kind of like a reinforcement video, so I can reinforce these concepts before we move on to new ones. So these concepts you can basically immediately employ into your own models as well. So let's go ahead and this piece is done here. So let's go ahead and just press / on the numpad to go back into global view, and we can press the H key to hide that piece. Let's go to another piece on here. Perhaps we could go to this barrel down here. Okay. So let's see, what areas on here could we remove for baking? Well, first of all, I think we could easily remove this piece right here. Let's go ahead and turn on and off the boolean. Unless it's applied, it looks like this area is applied, unfortunately. So really easy fix. We'll just tab into face mode, select this face, we can press M, merge at center, and then we can Alt Shift click these vertices, and then M, merge at center, and then all we have to do is press Control X to dissolve out that vertex, and go to edge mode, dissolve out this edge. You might also have a floating vertex on the inside, as you can see here. You can either dissolve that with Control X as well, or with machine tools, you can just select everything and press the 3 key. It does the same thing. I like using the 3 key with machine tools because it basically removes all sorts of stuff, overlapping geometry, non-manifold geo, floating vertices, things like that. Okay, so we went ahead and, remove that piece because it was on a flat surface and didn't cut all the way through, so we could bake it. Let's see, is there anything else on this side that we could remove? Looks like we have a small problem here. I'm not sure how that occurred, but if we just turn on and off these booleans, it looks like we can simply just remove those. Okay, let's see what else we have. So this boolean right here, this cuts all the way through and it also defines the form. So we're going to actually want to apply this boolean here. That one needs to be applied. And then we have one more boolean in this modifier stack, and we can always go into wireframe mode and just kind of turn this off and on to see. So it looks like this last boolean right here is just a small cut at the end, so we can just go ahead and apply that one because this boolean defines the form. So we're going to go ahead and apply that. Cool. And just like I said before, make sure your bevel is set to 1 segment. Awesome. And it looks like we have a mirror modifier on here as well. It doesn't really matter if we apply it at this point in time. We can just apply it because it doesn't really look like it's helping us out here. So we'll just go ahead and remove that mirror modifier. Cool. Alright, so actually, no, let's apply the mirror modifier because remember when we removed this little cut right here, that mirror modifier is actually mirroring that effect to the other side. So if we removed it, we'd have to remove this side as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and apply that mirror. Cool. Alright, so let's also turn off the keep sharp option. Sometimes it'll kind of mess with the shading, like right here for example. Turn off the keep sharp option. Cool. I also noticed we have a small little shading error down here, so what we're going to do is tab into edit mode, and it looks like we just have a random edge, so we can go ahead and Control X to dissolve that out, and Control X to dissolve that one out, and I think that fixes it. I also see a small error down here. Let me, if you go into edit mode and you turn off this button, that'll actually disable the bevel in edit mode, so we can kind of like, if you have a bunch of extra random vertices here, you can just go in here and Control X to dissolve those out. and we could also dissolve that edge out as well. Cool. And it looks like we have the same issue on the other side, so all I'm going to do is select this, Alt X, and then symmetrize to the other side. So it doesn't really matter if you have random, topology issues. They're always easy to fix if you know what you're doing. Generally, you just have to dissolve things out and you'll be good to go. Cool. Looks like we actually have one more stray vertex right here. We can Control X that one, and then Control X that one as well. And also one here, and also one here. Cool, so it looks a lot better. Awesome. So now technically we could bake this detail, but much like I showed you in the last video, we would end up getting that floating edge issue across this portion. So we have two options in this case. We could simply, leave it alone and just leave the geometry as is, or we could go in here and just remove these little notches and bake in that detail. If you bake it in, you'll have a lower poly count, but you'll have to compromise with one of those floating edge issues. Whereas if you leave it, you'll have better quality, but the poly count will be a bit higher. Shouldn't be anything super significant, and with modern graphics cards nowadays, you can handle a lot higher poly count. So in my opinion, this was a situation in which we should actually just leave those notches alone. I think the quality is worth it. Alright, so let's see, is there anything else here we could bake? I don't think there is. You could potentially bake this barrel, but if you look at the barrel, it's cutting all the way through the mesh. See that? There's a hole at the end, so that might cause some baking issues, so I'm not going to actually attempt to bake this little hole on the inside. So that piece is done. Let's go ahead and hide it with the H key, and let's go around to another piece and see what we can do. So maybe we could just let's take this piece here on the top, this main one, and let's see what we can do with this. So this little cut here on the top, we could definitely bake. So let's see. Fortunately, the boolean is not applied, so all we have to do is just turn on and off the booleans till we find it, and just click the X button so that detail can be baked. Looks like we have one more boolean in here. I'm not sure what this one is contributing to. Doesn't look like this is doing anything. Actually, yes it is. Right down here, we have a small little cut. Now this one cuts all the way through, so we're not going to actually attempt to remove that. We're just going to go ahead and apply it. Cool. And just like before, set the segment count to 1, turn off the keep sharp option, and you should be good to go. So as for this piece, I don't think there's really anything else we could bake on here, so I'm going to go ahead and press / on the numpad and hide it and move on to another piece. I'm not going to do every single piece in this video. I'll have a separate video where I finish this one from scratch, because some of you may already kind of understand what I'm going for, and you might be able to do this on your own. So let's just kind of move around and see. Let's do one more piece here. Also, what in the heck is that? It was like shaded weird. I don't know what happened. Cool, let's do one more piece. Maybe we could do... Let's do this thing in the back, because this one has a lot of stuff we could bake. So first of all, this cut here is on a flat surface, so we can go ahead and remove it. I'll select this face, M, merge it center, and then Alt-Shift-click these vertices, M, merge it center, and then if we select everything, we can press the 3 key to just clean up anything, and also we can dissolve out these edges here with Control X. Awesome. Let's see what else we could do. Let's go ahead and Alt X to symmetrize to the other side to remove this one. Cool. Now we can't bake this one because this one is cutting through the mesh, so it would not bake properly. As a matter of fact, just to show you what would happen, I think it would be a good idea. I'm going to quickly hop over to Marmoset and show you how a bake would look if you tried to bake a piece that's cutting directly through the mesh. So let me show you that real quick. Okay, cool. So I went ahead and patched up that hole. Let's see what would happen if I tried to bake the hole that is on the high poly. Alright, so check this out. We're going to let Marmoset do its thing. Give it a second. This is the type of situation you would run into. You're going to see these bakes right here were fine because it wasn't cutting all the way through, but for holes that cut all the way through, the baking does not work. We get these really weird shading issues, and overall it's just a mess. So I never recommend trying to bake holes that go through the mesh. Now you should understand why. Okay, cool. So back to what we were doing before. Let's see what else we can bake. Probably not too much. These little notches right here, we could technically bake them. Keep in mind we would have that floating line issue down the edge. That's not going to be a very obvious one though, if I'm honest, so it's kind of up to you on what you want to do for that one, but I don't think it's going to be a super obvious issue because of how small these are. So this is a situation in which I would actually be okay with those lines appearing, because I just don't think anyone's going to really be able to see them with how small these notches are. But it's totally up to you. Both answers will be fine, whether you want to keep them or remove them. Doesn't matter to me. I think both are equally as decent solutions. So just going to go ahead. All I'm doing is merging these vertices together. Super simple. And then to clean up the stray vertices, we just press 3 with machine tools, and there we go. And then we could just go ahead and Alt-X to symmetrize over to the other end. Awesome. I don't think we can do too much here. We could close up this hole and bake it, but honestly, I don't think I'm going to bother. Cool, and also keep in mind, whenever you run a symmetry, you'll also get a line going down through the center, so you can always go back in and Alt-click it and Control-X to dissolve it out. So that's always a decent solution as well. Cool. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and hide this piece. Now you should kind of get the idea of what we're going for. We're going around to each piece and removing the bakeable areas and keeping the ones that might cause us problems. Now in the next video, I'm going to show you a different form of decimation which doesn't have to do with flat surfaces, but has to deal with curved surfaces. And this is how we can decimate down our bevels. So I'll see you for the next video. Okay, so in this video, we're going to start working on the game asset optimization. So like I said, we're going to be using our MAD-T workflow system: modeling, automation, decimation, and triangulation. Now obviously modeling always comes first, but in terms of the A, D, and the T of our workflow, those can be relatively interchanged. You could triangulate first with a modifier if you wanted to. It doesn't really matter. We're just going to hop straight into the decimation portion, okay? Because what we want to do is we want to take this gun, which is currently about 500,000 tries, 490 to be exact, and what we want to do is make this way lower. 490,000 tries for this gun is insane. So we're going to focus specifically on how to optimize this asset and just prepare it really. So the first thing I want to do is just have a clean collection up here. This is a bit too much going on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, new collection. I'm going to name this high, and we're just going to right click, new collection, and call this one low. So this will be our low poly collection, and this will be our high poly collection. This is going to help us when we're trying to organize everything. So the first thing I want to do is select everything, press the M key, and move this to the high poly collection. So now, as you can see, I can kind of turn this off and on. Cool. And then for these collections up here, which are no longer being used, I can go ahead and delete those out. No problem at all. Now what I want to do is duplicate this again, Shift D, and move this with the M key to the low poly collection. So now what we're going to have are two duplicates. We're going to have the high and the low. But obviously this is not low poly yet, so we have to begin working on that. So the first thing you have to consider if you want to start making this into a low poly asset is what detail can I bake? Now, a lot of you are probably familiar with baking processes and normal maps. If not, we're going to discuss it. But basically, what baking means is that you can take a detail on your model and bake it into a map, which essentially gives the illusion of detail, even though the detail isn't actually there. So normal maps are a common way to do this. So if you have a normal map, it's basically a lighting trick. The detail isn't actually there, so the poly count's lower, but it still looks like the detail's there. So that's the first thing we want to do. We want to figure out what detail is bakeable. So the best way to do this, and the easiest way to find what detail we can bake, is to look at the flat surfaces of your model. And on those flat surfaces, what we can do is remove detail on it, as long as the detail doesn't cut all the way through the mesh. So for example, this Valkyr symbol, this can be baked very easily. However, down here, for example, this little cut here is on a flat surface, but it cuts all the way through the model, and this wouldn't actually bake properly. You would get baking issues. So in that type of case, you don't want to remove it. But, you know, up here, for example, we can easily remove this Valkyr symbol because we can bake it. Now, this is super easy to do. Check this out. What we're going to do is just select this model. What I like to do is just select piece by piece, press / on the numpad like that, so I can isolate it. And then what I like to do is just kind of manage piece by piece, really. So, like I said, the Valkyr symbol, we can bake that detail easily. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove this Boolean modifier. That's why I always recommend leaving the Booleans live if you can. And then same for over here. We can remove that. You can also see we have our bevel modifiers, and for some reason we have two. So we have the holding bevel, and we also have this other bevel. I don't think that bevel's doing anything, so probably like a mistake. So we'll just go ahead and remove that one. Now on every single bevel modifier, you want to make sure your segment count is set to 1. Okay, so we'll turn that down. The reason we want to set it to 1, there's a couple reasons actually. First of all, if you set the segment count to 1, it drops the poly count because instead of using 3 segments, you're using 1. And you can see that we went from 469,000 tries down to 466 just by changing this to 1. Now there's additional reasons which are a bit more technical. One of the main reasons is that when you're unwrapping, you want to make sure that you have a hard defined edge. And if you have a rounded bevel, let me go into wireframe. If this is set to 3 segments, we have a more rounded bevel, which doesn't have any hard defined edges. But if we set this to 1, now we have hard defined edges. As you can see, it's a 45 degree. And this is going to help prevent issues with unwrapping. If you were to try to bake this at 3 segments, you would get baking artifacts everywhere. So in general, it's just a win-win. Set the segment count to 1, you're going to lower the poly count, and you're not going to run into any issues. And basically, the difference between 1 and 3 is like the same thing. You can't really see much of a difference. Now, if you have a weight to normal modifier, I would recommend turning off the keep sharp button. You're going to see it shades a bit nicer. Cool. So that's all we have to do. Super easy. So once you've removed any detail on the flat surfaces that we can bake, which we haven't done yet. For example, right here, these little buttons right here we could bake. Now, unfortunately, these little buttons we don't have a Boolean for. Those Booleans got applied. As you can see, I can select that geometry. So in this case, what I want to do is press X, delete vertices, and then all we have to do is just go into vertex mode, Alt-click, Alt-Shift-click, and then press M and merge at center basically. And you can press Ctrl-X to dissolve out that vertex and then dissolve out that edge. And then all we really need to do is just symmetrize, so Alt-X and then run a symmetry to flip it. And this detail right here we could probably bake as well. So we can just go ahead and X, delete vertices. And just like we did before, we can Alt-Shift-click around here. We can, let's M and merge at center. And then just kind of dissolve out all this extra geo we don't really need, especially this edge down the center. Cool, so already looking a lot better. Now what you're probably thinking is, okay, this is pretty simple, so let's just go over here and, you know, remove this area as well. It's on a flat surface, and it also doesn't cut all the way through, so what's the problem? This is actually quite a unique situation, and I think I'm just going to show you why inside of Marmoset, which is a baking software, to really emphasize why I wouldn't really recommend removing this type of geometry. You'll see what I mean in a second. Okay, so let's say I did take this area here and I removed it. So what I'm going to do for that is just go to, where's the snap mode? I'm losing my mind here. I don't know what, I'm just going to do Control-Shift-Tab. Menu looks new, I think. So I'm just going to go into vertex snap mode. I'm going to press G, X, and then hold Control to snap it here. Let me also make sure align rotation to target is turned off. Okay, and then I can just go ahead and press 3 with machine tools to remove the duplicate vertices. And then I'll just go ahead and dissolve out these edges here. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to also symmetrize over. In this case here, I removed that little detail. Now let's see what would happen if I tried to bake that detail from the high poly, because you're going to see the high poly model will obviously still have that detail. The high poly model will have all the detail because we'd be baking the detail from the high poly onto the low poly. So I'm going to show you what will happen. So this is Marmoset Toolbag. We'll be discussing this later on in the course. For now, I just want you to observe what will happen because there's going to be a small little issue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just bake it. So we'll just do that real quick. We'll be discussing this whole interface in Marmoset once we get to the section on unwrapping, so don't worry about it right now. Just going to give it a second to bake, okay? Okay, so you're going to see baked pretty good. The Valkyr baked fine. This detail up here baked fine. Okay, but there's one issue with this one. Check this out. Look right here. Notice how there's this floating line in a corner where there shouldn't really be any geometry. This is like air right here, you know? This cut shouldn't have a line going down the edge. You see that? The reason this is occurring, and I'll show you, is because of how baking works. So on the low poly, we completely remove that detail. And I'm just going to go to the high poly and show you how the baking is working, okay? So we'll turn the high poly on. And this is basically what's happening. So on our high poly, we have the cut, but on the low poly, it's kind of filling in that cut. And when it fills in that cut, we have this extra edge that goes down the little piece right here in the corner, right? And that's exactly why we see this line going down through here. So in situations like these, it's not really the best idea to remove those details, even though we've found a piece on a flat surface that is also not cutting through it. Although we've fulfilled those two check boxes, we still found a situation in which this doesn't work. Now, there's always an argument of, will you actually see this? Will people actually care? And I totally get that. If this was going to save me like thousands of tries, I mean, I might just leave it because it's not that big of a deal. But if you look at this cut here, there's really not too many vertices going on. So in my opinion, I think it's a better choice just to leave the cut here and maintain the quality. So these are situations you have to be careful of because the cut ends over here, and when you try to bake it, you're going to get this really nasty kind of hovering line on the model. So I hope that makes sense. Hope the demonstration kind of showed you the issue there. Now the same exact issue would also occur on these pieces. We would end up getting a floating line right here. So, and also, you know, a floating line down through here as well. So that's basically the only thing you need to consider that might not work. Like I said, you could bake it anyways and just ignore that floating line. It's up to you. I'd prefer the quality, so I don't do it personally. All right, so let's recap here. So when it comes to baking, the first thing I like to do is figure out where my flat surfaces are. And on those flat surfaces, what detail can I bake? You cannot bake detail that cuts all the way through the model, but you can bake detail that only cuts a little bit into the model. But you also want to be careful because when situations like these occur, you might end up getting these really weird floating edges. So keep that in mind. That's the exact process you're going to use for every other portion of this model here. And we're just going to do an extra video after this just to kind of reinforce these concepts. All right, so in this video, we're going to put it all together. We're going to decimate this entire weapon from a high poly to a low poly. And once again, the only techniques you need to do this are the ones we presented in the last few videos. The first thing you need to do is remove elements that can be baked, and you also need to reduce the bevel segment counts. That is all you need to do to take your high poly to a low poly. It's very simple once you get the hang of it. So I'm going to do this entire thing from scratch. I really want you guys to understand the full workflow. So this video will be a bit longer, but I'd highly recommend watching it because after you watch this, you should be able to go and do this process for any hard surface model out there, including ones you've already made. So the first thing I want to do, I know I already did this in the previous videos, I'm just going to do it again. I want to right click and make a new collection and call this one high. And then right click, make a new collection, just drag that out here and call this one low. Awesome. So I'm just going to select everything, press M and move this to the high poly. Then what we'll do is duplicate it with Shift D, right click, and then M to move it to the low poly collection. So the high poly, we don't really have to touch right now. The low poly is going to be the one we're going to start decimating down. I'll also just go ahead and remove these two collections right here, and that should be good to go. Awesome. Alright, so let's just start here. I know we already did this one, but like I said, we're going to do this whole thing again from scratch just to kind of reinforce everything. And we're going to put everything together as well, because the last few videos were kind of separate. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is go through all the booleans I have in the modifier stack and either remove them or apply them. You already know what to do. If it's a bakeable element, you remove it. If it's not, you apply it. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and turn this off and on. So this one cuts straight through the mesh, and it also defines the form. So for this one, we're going to have to apply it. Okay, and then these here, I think these are just accidental cuts, so we can remove those. And then we have one more boolean in the back, which just makes it a bit shorter. Can apply that. We're going to set the bevel segment count to 1. And let's also make sure our weighted normal modifier has keep sharp turned off. Okay, I'm pretty sure all of them have keep sharp turned on, because when you add a weighted normal with hard ops, it automatically turns it on. So it's kind of annoying, but not that big of a deal. Cool, so I don't think there's any other bakeable elements. Actually, yes, there is. This one got applied, so sometimes you'll have booleans that already got applied, which you'll have to clean up manually. I'm just going to be using machine tools to merge things together. So you can press Shift 1 with machine tools to merge it at the center, and then Alt Shift click here, Shift 1 again, and then we can simply dissolve out these two edges with Control X, and then select everything to clean up any stray vertices with the 3 key. Okay. So like I mentioned before, we can't really bake this hole because it goes all the way through the mesh. It's a full cut, and we'll have baking issues like I demonstrated before. We could, however, probably decimate this area down a bit. So let me just Alt Shift click around here and just grab every other one basically. Control X. Same for right here. If you ever have an issue with Alt Shift click, you can just hold Shift instead, because there's probably some different geo at the end. Control X. And notice I have a mirror modifier on here, so basically any portion I do on the right will be mirrored to the left since we have the modifier. We'll apply that once we're done. So there's not too much we can really bake in here. We could bake these notches, but like I already mentioned in the other video, if we try to bake these, we'll end up getting that floating line effect. And I think these are pretty important elements because they really define the structure. As a matter of fact, that's one of the most obvious pieces here on the weapons. So although you won't really see it from far away, if this is like a first-person shooter type of weapon and you're able to like see it at a certain angle, it might look kind of weird. It's probably not that big of a deal. It's probably me being picky, but I just tend to err on the side of clean shading. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave these. You could go in here and decimate these down a bit if you wanted to, but I mean, it's only 5 segments in here. It's going to be a waste of time. I'm really only worried about decimating down, you know, heavier segments. So let's just kind of pan around here, see if we missed anything. I don't think we did. Actually, it looks like we need to just dissolve this portion as well, because it ended right there. Control X. So that should be good. Let me dissolve out this random edge there. Not sure what that's doing. And I think that's about it. I don't think there's too much left to do here, really. So I'm just going to go ahead and apply that mirror modifier, and now everything should be nice and clean. And as you can see here, it's pretty low poly. So let's press / on the numpad to go back into global view, and we can hide this. Maybe we'll go to this piece now. So no booleans on this one, so we can just change the segment count to 1 right off the bat and turn off keep sharp. And this one should be super easy. All we really need to do is you can do the trick I showed you. Box select, checker deselect, which I have mapped to Control Q. You can offset it and then Control X. Go down here, Control Q, offset, Control X. You can dissolve out that middle one. Dissolve out these random edges here. Not sure what those are doing. And then we can simply Alt X, change this to symmetry, and symmetrize. Really easy. And whenever you symmetrize, like I said, make sure you dissolve out that middle edge that ends up appearing. Okay, we can do the inside as well. Control Q, Control X, Control Q, offset that one, Control X. Can do a few here. And is there any more? Yep, right here on the front. Control X. I could go a bit lower. Actually, no, I couldn't, because it'll just flatten out. So that should be good enough. We'll symmetrize it one more time. And I think we're good to go. Just dissolve that middle edge out. Cool. All right, so / on the numpad, we can hide that. Let's go over to this piece right here. Quite a few booleans on this one. So this one here, some of these might not even be doing anything. Some of them just get carried over. So we can apply this one, that one, and pretty much all of these. And then we're just going to change the segment count to 1. We have a mirror, so we only have to focus on one side, and then turn off keep sharp. And I don't think there's too much to do in here besides maybe drop these a bit. Okay. Yep, really easy one. We'll just hide it and then maybe hop over to these pieces right here. Now let me actually undo this real quick. I want to see where... Actually, I won't undo it. I'll press Alt-H to unhide everything. This detail right here, these little things can be baked, I think. Yeah, that should be a bakeable element. So this is a situation where, you know, an element that's not a Boolean could actually be baked quite well. So you know what? Let's go ahead and just delete these. I don't think we need them. Press the delete key. Cool. All right, so maybe we'll go over to this piece now. So change the bevel segment count to 1, turn off keep sharp. And these pieces should be really easy. What we can do, shift click these two faces, go into vertex mode, turn off align rotation to target, otherwise it'll kind of go crazy when you snap it. So we're just going to turn that off. And then G, X, hold control, and then just select everything and press 3. Cool. And it's still a bit off here. Let's merge that again. You could also use the auto merge tool, but it tends to like act weird for me, so I don't use it. And we just Control X these vertices here. Control X, and then just 3 to clean up the mess. Cool. So this right here is a stray edge. We can remove that. We can dissolve those down. I'm going to actually leave those alone because then we're going to have to play with the angle, which isn't that big of a deal, but I might have to go higher than I want. Then we just go down here, Alt-Shift-Click, and I think we just have these left. Dissolve these out. And then the ones on the front here, Control X to dissolve those out, and then we can simply Alt-X to symmetrize. Awesome. So that one was easy. We can dissolve out that middle edge now, go back into global view and hide it. This piece here should be pretty simple. Just zoom in and see what's happening here. Looks like there's a mirror modifier on it. Okay, change the segment count to 1, turn off keep sharp, and this one we're going to do a bit more manually. Let's just Alt-Shift-Click these little rings right here. I probably can't go any lower than that. And then we'll just go ahead and let's apply the mirror. Okay. Then we're just going to go ahead and just do 1/2 of this. I can just go into top view. So just Alt-Shift-Click all the way around. Control X, and then just symmetrize to the other side. Cool. Really simple one. Can even get rid of that. Cool. And then just dissolve out this line here, or edge, and that edge there. Awesome. These are more cylindrical ones should be really easy to do. They are a bit tedious because you have to do them a bit more manually. This one doesn't have a weighted normal, so let me just add one. Cool. And then what we're going to do is do this basically the same thing here. Control X. and then just go through here. Cool. And then once again, Alt-X, symmetrize, and we can just get rid of these random pieces here. And let's also make sure we decimate this portion down. Cool. So far so good, making progress. So let's hide this. Now we can't really, I don't think we're going to be able to bake these rings right here, but we'll definitely be able to bake these elements here. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these elements. That's actually a lot of geometry as well, if you were to add all those vertices up. So we're going to delete that and delete that, because I can tell you right now that is going to bake just fine. Okay, so also some floating screws right here. Look at that later. Cool, so we'll hide this one and then just go to these little rings right here. And let's just, you know, Control X and then symmetrize over. And we have some stray vertices. I'm not sure what's up with that. Let me just... What is happening here? Let me turn off the bevel for a second. I think we have two on top of each other. Let me just click again. Yeah, we have like another one here for some reason. I'll delete that. Not that big of a deal. You're always going to run into issues like that at some point. Okay, we can change the segment count here to 1 and add a weighted normal because that's missing. And the same for this one. You could just duplicate it and try to align it on your own. It's quick enough for me to just, you know, dissolve half, symmetrize, change the segment count to 1, and then add a weighted normal. It's a pretty simple process. Okay, this one right here. This one should not be too hard. Let's change the segment count to 1. Give it a weighted normal because it's missing. And let's see. Not sure what this is doing here. Gonna just Control X to dissolve that. We could probably dissolve those. And then we could dissolve these around here as well. And then just hit it with a symmetry. That was a pretty easy one. There's a few areas on the inside we could maybe dissolve down. And I think that's good enough. We can go ahead and hide it. Actually, I just noticed these little rings right here, these little like crevices or whatever, these could actually bake quite well. So I'm going to go ahead and just X, delete vertices. You can go into face mode and alt click here and just delete the vertices, and then it's really easy. You just alt shift click these two, and then you can right click to bridge the edge loops together and then just dissolve them out. It's a really easy trick for that one. So same here, delete those vertices out, bridge these portions together, and then simply dissolve out the anything that's not supporting the curvature. So in this case it would just be that one. Cool. So that one's good. We can go ahead and hide it. I'm not sure what these screws are doing here. I don't think we need them. I'm just going to delete them out. Not really doing anything. Okay, let's go to... I don't know why this one's like... That shading was weird. Interesting. Let's go to this piece here. We'll just take care of the small guys real quick. Segment count to 1. We can just apply this mirror modifier. I'm not sure what it's really doing here. Apply it and then give it a weighted normal. And then just like we did in the other ones, we're going to get in here, dissolve that down, dissolve all of this down. And then symmetrize. Cool. And let's get rid of that. Okay, and then this little crevice thing right here, let me turn off the bevel in edit mode. We can do the same thing. We can get rid of these little crevice looking shapes and bridge the edge loops together. Dissolve them out, bridge them together, and then dissolve them out. Cool, really easy. I'll just go ahead and hide it. Let's go to this thing. This one's just like a random pipe or something. We don't need a bevel on this one. Reason being is because it's not manifold on either side. There's no face here and there's no face here. So even if you try to run a bevel, there's not really like, there's nothing to bevel, right? The only hard edges on this would be where these caps are, but there are no caps. So all I'm really going to do for this one is just maybe dissolve those two out. I can't really do anything else here. That should be fine. Go ahead and hide that. Now we'll go to like the main piece of the gun here. And just like we did before, segment count to 1. Let's go through our booleans. We have Valkyr, which can be baked. And then we have Valkyr on the other side, which can also be baked. And then we have this random bevel right here, which I don't think is doing anything, so we can remove that and turn off keep sharp. Okay, awesome. So you already know the issue here is if you try to bake that, you'll get like a weird line. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave it alone. And I think maybe we could go in here and do a few additional bevel decimations. So maybe we could, let's dissolve out these edges. I'm not sure what those are doing. Maybe we could go in here, decimate these down a bit. That's fine. Decimate those down a bit. Same for here. That's actually going to be too low, I think. Yeah, it's going to be a bit too faceted, so I'm going to leave that as is. Cool, and maybe right here, we just can go and Control X. And these little elements here can actually be baked, so Shift 1, Shift 1, and then here we could do the same thing, Shift 1, and then take these edges here and Shift 1 those. Then just dissolve out those random edges, clean it with the 3 key, and then hit it with the symmetry. Pretty much the same tool set all around, nothing crazy. And then I think right here we could maybe do a little bit of decimation on this portion. Okay. Right there, looks good. Same for right here. Awesome. And I think that's about it. I don't think there's really anything else we could... Actually, yes there is. I missed it. We can get rid of this random edge right here. And we can also sneak in here and drop those down a bit. These could even drop a bit lower if we really wanted to, but I'm not going to go too crazy here. Decimate those, and then just get rid of this edge down the middle, and that one should be fine. Cool. So we'll just go ahead and hide that. I mean, we're already like close to halfway done with this thing, so although the gun looks complicated, decimating it is the easiest process because you only need a few tools in the bag. So what we're going to do is... let's hide these random cutters. I think these empties are in the cutters collection. We'll just turn that off. Let's go to this piece right here. I think we already did a short demonstration on this one. So let's go to one segment, check out these booleans. So I don't think this one's doing anything. We can remove it, nor is this one. Cool. And then just turn off keep sharp. Alright, so we can deal with the baking pieces at the end. I first want to decimate down the bevels a bit, just personal preference. So we can decimate those. And then decimate these here. And same for that one. Do a few right here. Cool. And then do a few right here. Let's get rid of this random edge. And then, actually, I think that edge is helping the shading out, so we'll leave that one alone. And instead, we could just go in here and... this one's a bit tricky. Just do that. That should be fine. Yeah, I think we can do that. Then same for down here. Let's just go ahead and go through here. Control X. Control X that one. And we have an extra loop around here, it looks like. We can just dissolve that one out. Cool. And now what we're going to do is just quickly symmetrize this over. That's pretty good. Cool. So let's go ahead and now deal with the pieces we can bake. So these little notches right here, not very noticeable, and also there's something sitting on top of it, so I don't think we'll even notice that floating edge issue that we'll end up getting. Same for down here. These notches are going to kind of have like a clamp inside of it, so I don't think we'll ever really notice it. So I'm just going to go ahead and completely get rid of these pieces here. So we can take these faces, G, X, and then snap to the vertices, and then just clean it with the 3 key, and then dissolve the edges. Really easy. And then same for here. Whoops, I think I did that backwards. Let's go here, 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 and then here. And then you might have to go into wireframe mode to dissolve out those last two. Clean that up. I almost missed these edges right here. We can decimate those down a bit. Cool. And I think that's about it. Is there anything I missed? I don't think so. Go ahead and quickly symmetrize it. Get rid of that symmetry line. And I would say that is a pretty good result. I don't think I'm missing anything here. I hope I'm not. This piece looks a little bit tilted down. I don't know what happened. Interesting. I think I did something wrong here. That's easy though to fix this. We can just take these vertices, right? And then just snap them, G, Z, and then hold control to snap those up. Clearly something messed up here. What in the world? You can always just go back to your high poly piece as well and just refer to that to really see what happened. I probably dissolved something out by accident and it looks like it was these two edges, so we can just go and add those back here on the low poly. Join those there. Yep, join that there. And then SZ0. And then whatever this is, we can dissolve out. And it's still messing up. Let me play with the angle here. It's set to weight, so I think we just need to simply mark that with a B weight. And we're almost back to where we were. It's still kind of messed up. I don't know what happened. Interesting. So let's go into side view and take a look. This is where you really have to start learning how to diagnose problems. So we can kind of refer to this one and see what exactly happened. Okay, so that's a very nice consistent edge flow, whereas here, it got messed up somewhere. This one looks like a bit too much of a pain to deal with, so what you can always do is delete out anything you mess up on, and then just take the one from the high poly, duplicate it again, and then just move that to the low poly collection. Now before you do that, you have to make sure you're in global mode, so it's not really that big of a deal. Yes, we're going to have to quickly get back in here and redo it, but I'd much rather show you a case in which a mistake was made and how to fix it, rather than having you go through the same process and just get frustrated. That is exactly what I would do personally if a situation like that occurred. So my guess is I dissolved this one out by accident and just kind of messed up the whole thing and didn't notice. So things like that will sometimes happen and you really have to know how to fix it up. Now right here we're set to weight, so we need to put a bevel weight, so Q, and then mark. And we'll just get back in here real quick. It's not that big of a deal. We already know what we need to do roughly. Okay. And then we'll just go back to, just dissolve that out. Then we'll just go back in here, take these, merge them. I'm just going to go through this part quickly because we already did it. And you should be able to follow along quite well. I'm just going to merge all these up. Oops. Merge that over, and then clean it up. And then I just think I got to take care of these real quick. Control X, Control X, and Control X inside of here. And I think that's it, so we'll just go ahead and quickly symmetrize that over. Make sure the segment count is set to 1. And I'll just get rid of those booleans because they're not doing anything, and turn off keep sharp, and that should be good to go. Cool. So that one's done. We'll just go ahead and hide it. Let's go to this thing. This one's interesting. This one might be a little bit tricky, but we'll do it. Maybe not, I'm not sure. So first of all, change the segment count to 1 and turn off keep sharp, and we're just going to get in here. Just do a bit of decimation. Actually, this one should be pretty easy. Let me apply this mirror modifier. It's kind of like distracting seeing that on the mirror. So we'll just go ahead and apply it. So let's go through here and how do I want to do this? So I'm going to dissolve out that. Okay. And then here, here, and here. I'm just going to select that manually because it's selected an area I don't want to have selected. That actually helps the curvature this edge down here. So what I'm going to do instead is maybe do these. Cool. This vertex we can simply merge up there. A little bit of some messy geo right here, but not that big of a deal. Can merge this up and merge that up. Okay, and let's do, I'm going to leave those alone. I'm going to dissolve that, and then it looks like we have some overlapping verts we could just merge together. Cool. So once you really understand kind of how topology works and how things are, overlapping and causing issues, it really becomes an easy process to identify what those issues are. So when I decimate this one down, the angle ends up catching, so I'm just going to increase that just a little bit until it catches again, and then symmetrize over. And then maybe down here we could just do a quick decimation. And I think that's about it. We'll just dissolve down the middle one and we should be good to go. Cool. So we'll just go ahead and get rid of that. Let's go to the trigger. For some reason that's a lot of segments. Let's change this to 1. Turn off keep sharp on the way to normal. And we can just, we'll leave the mirror on, that's fine. So this one might be a little bit tricky because this is where we were really more worried about shading optimization more than anything. So I'm just going to get the easy ones down first. I don't think there's any elements on this piece that we can bake. So I'm just going to worry about the bevels for right now. Don't forget about the ones on the inside. It's very easy to forget about those. Same for the top. Okay. And same for right here. Now you want to be careful because I don't actually want to get rid of this portion, so I might actually end up leaving the rest of it because this is going to be a bit too much of an issue to try to deal with. It's just going to end up causing like all sorts of shading problems, so I'm just going to leave that one alone, just simply due to the complexity of this trigger here. We can just go ahead and apply our mirror, dissolve out our middle edge, and let me also grab this one here. Okay, and also down here. Cool, and then just symmetrize. Oops, missed this one too, I guess. That one's uneven, so we're just going to go ahead and symmetrize and call it a day for that one. Okay, awesome. So now we're just going to go to, let me turn off the cutters collection. It keeps getting turned on. I'm not sure why these are like pitch black. I have no idea. Anyways, let's go to this piece right here. This one should be easy because we already did it. Change the segment count to 1 and turn off keep sharp, and all we're going to do is just get in here. Don't go into material mode. And make sure you save from time to time as well. It's very easy to forget about that. Or just use power save, which will automatically save for you. That's what I use. So I have like an auto save folder every 2 minutes. So the worst case scenario is I lose 2 minutes of work. Gonna dissolve those. Gonna dissolve these. Same with these, and then same with these here. Same for these, and these, and these. Now this one is barely supporting the curvature, so we could actually get away with quite a few decimations on this one, I think. Oops, missed the wrong one. Yeah, we might be able to actually do something like that. That's pretty good. These here, how do I want to do this? I'm just going to leave that one alone, but actually maybe not. Let's take care of this. I just realized we can bake this one. So shift 1, and then shift 1, and then dissolve these two out, and then clean it. And actually I do think we can decimate this down as a matter of fact. Control X. Yep, should work. And just do a quick symmetry. Cool. I'm going to go ahead and do my little checker deselect trick for that one. Control Q, Control X. Control Q, Control X. Cool. Awesome, and it looks like the bevel angle ended up catching again, so we'll just slightly increase that until it catches. Let's do a few decimations right here. And yeah, maybe right here as well. If these were a bit further in, we could bake them, but when they're sticking out this far, the bake's not going to look very accurate. So we're actually just going to leave these as is. We're not going to try to remove them or anything. Just going to go ahead and Control X. Same for these. Control X, and then simply hit it with a symmetry. And then just go in here. And you want to be careful because if you try to dissolve out the middle line, that'll happen. So what I'm going to do is actually just leave it in there. It's not that big of a deal. Or if you just wanted a bit more manual control, you would just control click around like this. There you go. We can also get rid of these random lines through here. Some of them we might need though, because every boolean, every cut has to have at least 2 connection points on it, so it might only work to a certain extent. Cool, that's fine. And we'll just go ahead and hide this piece. That one was easy. Actually, I just realized I missed this upper portion. Let me grab that real quick. And then I'll symmetrize it. And then once again, we'll just get rid of this edge down through here. Bit annoying having to do that each time, but you know, what can you do? Not that big of a deal, I guess. I could even do it on the inside here. Get these dissolved. These, and then these as well. Cool. Now this pad here in the back should be able to be baked, so we're just going to delete that because it's close enough. That should bake just fine. Then we can hide that one. This piece right here should be easy. We'll just change the segment count to 1, turn off keep sharp on the way to normal, and then I'll just do my simple Control Q, Control X trick and symmetrize it over. Cool, so that one was easy. We'll hide it. These little latches here, those can all be baked in, so I'm just going to delete these because it's like on that little indent that we removed earlier, so we'll just delete those out. Just to show you. See, it's on the flat surface, so those will be baked just fine. We're almost done here. Alright, so let's go to these pieces. The nice thing about this one is I already know that pretty much all this is flat and all the detail on it can hence be baked. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tab into edit mode. I'm going to press the L key on all these little pieces here and just delete the vertices. As for this piece, we'll just delete it out. And then literally all we have to do on this one is shift 1, Shift 1. Whoa, that was a weird behavior. We might need to dissolve out these edges right here because those are collapsing. So Shift 1, then same for here. Shift 1, and then Shift 1 again. Cool, and then just dissolve out the rest. Really easy to clean up. We could do a quick decimation on these corners because, you know, why not? We'll go here. It looks like these were not the correct count, but, you know, it's not a big deal. It's a very small piece anyways. And just do a quick symmetry. Dissolve out that middle line, and we are good to go for that piece. We can hide it. Make sure the, by the way, the segment count is set to 1. Keep sharp turned off. Also, some of these pieces that are smaller, you technically don't really need a bevel on because you're not going to really see the bevel if it's like a super small piece like on the inside. But I'm just, for making things easier to understand, I'm putting a bevel on all of them because most of these pieces on this weapon we can see anyways. So these right here, 1 segment, keep sharp. On pieces like this where you know there's not really much going on, I usually just go in here and click Smart Apply, which will apply all the booleans but keep the bevel and weighted normal. And then I could just go in here and do a quick Control X. Let's adjust that angle a bit. And do a quick symmetry and hide that. I'm not sure if these screws, I think these screws are important, but these screws will be baked because they're already on the element that we deleted. So I'm going to go ahead and delete out these screws right here. Just to show you, these screws here are inside this little hole that's going to be baked, so we don't need them on the low poly. Cool, so definitely making progress. Let's do this piece right here. I like to do the bigger pieces because once you remove the bigger pieces, the whole thing seems a lot more manageable. So we have this boolean right here on the front that's cutting straight through, so we're going to have to apply that. And then we also have this one on the top, which we can remove because that's a flat surface, can be baked. Set it to 1 segment, turn off, keep sharp, and really the main thing we could decimate down in here is this portion. So let me Alt-Shift click around here. Now this is an interesting situation because we're going to end up getting through this selection. So maybe what I'll do is just connect a new point here to here with the J key and then dissolve this out here. So now when I do the selection, it actually doesn't hit that one and select all the way around because we don't want to dissolve all the way around. So Control X, do a quick symmetry. And what else are we missing? I'm going to slightly increase that angle until it catches. And I think that one should be fine, looks good. I think I need to make this angle a little bit lower so that one catches. It's kind of a tricky situation because we're kind of like compromising one for the other. So we could use a weight instead. We could just change this to weight, sharpen it, and then just manually mark this one. So you would just Alt click here or just Control click to the end and then mark it with a weight. You could do pretty much the same thing that way. There you go. So now we basically bypass that situation with the angle. Cool, so that one's done. We'll go ahead and hide it. Just a lot of little pieces in here we have to take care of. So this one right here should be easy. This boolean cuts straight through. We're going to have to apply it. And these booleans also cut straight through. We're going to have to apply those. Segment count to 1. Keep sharp turned off. And there's no sort of bevels on here really except for right here. So just do Control X and then apply this mirror. Easy. This one right here, let's see, boolean, apply that, apply this one, and apply this one. 1 segment, keep sharp turned off, and then maybe just do a few little decimations right here. Cool, then we can apply the mirror modifier. Awesome. And then we have this one down here, 1 segment, keep sharp turned off. We don't really have any bevels on this one, so I'll just dissolve out that middle edge and then hide it. Most of these pieces are going to be really easy at this point because they're super blocky. So like this one right here, just going to do with the booleans real quick. You'll just begin to develop an eye and to see, like, turn it off and on and immediately know when to apply it and when to not apply it. Cool, so one segment, we can apply the mirror and turn off keep sharp. Awesome. We're getting close, guys. We're going to go to this one. Let's just do a smart apply on this, because I already know I'm going to apply all those. And do a quick decimation here, and then a quick decimation here. Make the angle a bit higher, and then symmetrize it, and you're done. Just got to turn the segment count to 1. You know the drill. Cool. So how many of you actually made it to this point? Because I assume most of you get the drill by now, and we're just like, screw it, I'm doing this on my own. That's probably what I would have done, but I really wanted to make sure this whole thing was comprehensive, because I know when I was starting, I would have definitely wanted just to watch the entire thing. So one segment, keep sharp turned off. Guess we could do a little bit of decimating here. Does it really matter? Not too much. It's not really that much geometry, but why not? Let's merge this vertex here, and then just go all the way around. Control X. Actually, no, we're going to leave that alone. Let's leave that hole alone. Just going to be too much of a mess. Symmetrize it and then hide it. Cool. This piece right here should be pretty easy. We'll do one segment, and this can be baked for sure. And this cannot be baked since it cuts straight through. So we'll apply that. And there's not really any bevels on this one, is there? So easy enough. Just gotta hide it. This one here. Now, we're gonna have that floating line effect if we try to bake this, but this piece is so small compared to all the other ones that I'm not gonna worry too much. I'm just gonna go ahead and remove it. So what I can do is press G, Z, Z, Y, Y. Or what you can do is go up here and just add a custom orientation. And then if you press G and then Z, you'll have a custom like movement like that. Then just clean it with 3. Dissolve all of this out, and then just do your basic decimation. Cool, and then one segment, turn off keep sharp, and then apply the mirror. Should be good to go. Small little piece right here. We have this, then we have these. I'm just gonna go ahead and remove those. It's a very small element. One segment, we can apply the mirror, and then turn off keep sharp. Awesome. There's also a floating screw right here. Let me delete that. Now we're pretty much just left with this upper portion here, so not too much left to do. Let's take care of this. This one's pretty much just a one segment with keep sharp turned off, and we can hide it. These right here probably can be cleaned up a little bit. Does this cut all the way through this hole? It does. Interesting. This might still bake okay because of the screws right here, as a matter of fact. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete the screws. Even though the hole's cutting straight through, these screws are going to kind of block the baking rays from causing issues. So what I'm going to do is actually just patch this all up. It should work just fine. So shift 1 and then shift 1. Awesome. And something just happened. Let me undo that. Make sure you're only selecting what you actually need. Gotta be careful. Sometimes random edges end up getting selected, and you just have a mess. Cool. These we can definitely not bake. I'm not gonna dissolve these down because they're kind of tight. Could definitely dissolve this down a bit. So we could do that, and then do this one. Can maybe dissolve those out. And then we'll just do a quick symmetry. You might need to reset the origin point for this one. And let's make sure the origin point is set to bound center. Cool, and then we can delete out that screw. Awesome. And just set that to one segment, turn off, keep sharp, and maybe dissolve these out. And then hide it. Okay, cool. So now we have this thing right here. And let's see. I'm not too sure how this will bake because even though this is technically being cut all the way through, I think depending on how you have the baking settings set up, it's actually going to hit this floor below it. So we might actually be able to bake those elements. What I'm going to do is just go through the booleans on this piece. So we have one here in the back that looks like it's defining the form, so we'll apply it. These we're going to remove. Worst case scenario, we just undo it and we take the piece from the high poly and just make it a low poly again. This we can bake. And what else? These little notches here we can bake as well. Set that to 1, apply the mirror, and then turn off keep sharp. So pretty easy piece. Now these right here, where'd it go? Where are they? These right here will end up getting baked, so we can just go ahead and delete these because these were sitting in the hole that we just removed for baking. So these would end up getting baked in actually, so we can delete that. Cool. And then we have this piece. Just set that to 1 and turn off or add a way to normal. I guess one's missing. And let's see. These holes are so small, but they are cutting through, so I technically should not try to remove them. What I will do is decimate it down a bit though. Cool. And this is a bit of a heavy connection point, so I'm just going to use the knife tool and connect it here instead, and then dissolve that out. That should help it. Cool. And I think this piece is perfectly symmetrical, so what we could do, but thanks to the power of power save, we can just recover it, and we're basically right back to where we were before. So that is why I love using power save, because when things like that happen, you're good. So let's go ahead and try it again. Set the origin to the geometry. And then we're just going to unfortunately have to do this part over again. But you're definitely going to experience crashes. I don't know anyone who doesn't. So if you haven't had a crash yet, it's just a matter of time before you do. So get power save, so it saves your ass when it happens. Cool. And we're getting some double bevels here, no big deal. We just increase that a bit. Set the segment count to 1 and just drop on a weighted normal. Then we can just go ahead and do a symmetry like that, and then a symmetry over that side. Looks like we have some interior faces right here. That's why this weird issue is occurring. The reason I know that is just through experience. You'll eventually kind of know what issues are what. So we just got to delete out those interior faces and then dissolve that out. We're good to go. Cool, so I'll just go ahead and apply the mirror. I just realized we had a mirror. I could do a few basic decimations right here. And Control X. Let's see. I'll just do it for these. Cool. I think that one's good. Now make sure this make sure when you mirror this, or symmetrize it rather, it doesn't push in. If it's doing that, reset the origin to the geometry, but make sure it's set to bound center, and then when you symmetrize it, you should be good to go. So we'll just go ahead and hide that. These little screws right here should be able to be baked. I'm going to delete those. And also these little pieces right here should be able to be baked right on top of this pretty easily. So I'm going to delete these off as well. That should drop the poly count by a lot. That was like 40,000 or 30,000 tries. That was a lot. So, okay, looking good so far. All right, so what I want to do now is take this piece and let's change the segment count to 1. Keep sharp turned off, and I think there's an interior face. Also, let me apply the mirror because this just looks weird when it's flipped over that. Just apply the mirror, and I'm pretty sure there's an interior face. This is a good time to use the 3D print toolbox add-on. You just go toolbox add-on. Just type in 3D and the dash key, turn it on, and what you should be able to do is go to 3D print and check all, and then non-manifold edge, and let's try some of these other ones. We can try make manifold, see if that fixes it. Actually, that did. I'm surprised. Cool. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Anyways, that should have removed those interior faces sitting in there. So now we should be able to just Control X out that edge. That is perfect. We can also dissolve out these random edges here, and also these random edges here. This is a pretty long one, so when we do triangulate our mesh, which will be discussed later on, we're probably going to want to have a bit more supporting loops. So you could split this up into like 2. Otherwise, you'll have like this really long triangulation across it, which could cause potential issues. So in long pieces like this, I tend to split it up. So it's like, 3 separate triangulations, but you don't have to worry too much about that right now. All right, let's go to this piece right here. So segment count to 1. Keep sharp turned off, and we can just apply the mirror. I don't think there's too much to do on this one. Maybe we could Control X out those and then split this one up as well. We'll discuss more about that on the triangulation section, so that one should be fine. Now for these little pieces right here, 100% we can bake this detail that's on the top of it. Now the issue is this is part of the actual geometry, so what I think I'm going to do is we can just manually add a cylinder that covers this, and let me show you how to do that. What we would do is we would, let's press Shift S and move the cursor to the selected object. Let's add in a cylinder. We can give this one like 16 vertices, we don't need too many. Then we can sharpen it so it smooths out. And then all we would really do is rotate this down. And all you would have to do is just, come in here. Make sure you change it back to global transform orientation. Otherwise, you might have issues. So we could just, I don't know, like roughly match it. You can extrude this through. And then something like that. Now for this smaller part here, what I think I'll do is, how do I want to do it? We could put it here, extrude, scale that to like right about there, just kind of like a rough copy, and then simply delete the face, and that should be decent enough. You could drop a bevel on here if you wanted to, so bevel, scroll down to 1 segment, and I'm going to turn off hard normals and add a weighted normal instead, and this should be decent enough for a bake. So now all we need to do is mirror that to the other side. So I'm just going to Shift S to move the cursor back to the world origin, and then mirror over that cursor. So you would press Alt X, modifier, and if it's not on the cursor, you would basically just press the tab key and then choose cursor, just like that. Awesome, so just go ahead and hide that piece and delete this one. Looks good. Actually, let's not hide it because let's just delete the other one because we're going to want to duplicate this one over here as well. So just kind of like roughly match it. You don't have to be perfect. We just kind of want to get it like, right around there. Kind of like that, and then we can delete out the old one. Cool. Now we can go ahead and hide these. Alright, so let's, looks like we have another one of these plates right here. I think we already did this one. So we could just copy it. What I'm going to do is just find it. If we press Alt H and then click on this, we should be able to find the name. So slice 003, plate 005. We're going to be renaming everything earlier or later on, so don't worry about it too much. So slice 003 and plate 5. I don't know where it is. It's probably like a subcategory of one of these, so might have to kind of go in here and find it. I really don't know where it is. Interesting. If you unhide it again and you select it and you press the period key, it'll actually zoom in on it. It looks like it's a child of box P16, so whatever that is. So what we'll do is just turn that on and then turn on the other one. And all I'm going to do here is simply take it, duplicate this over, just put it right on top there, and then just delete out the old one. Cool. That was easy. Then just go ahead and hide those. I'm not too worried about, whether they're children or not. We can just leave it alone. Cool. Let me also delete out these little pieces right here. We're almost done. This is all we have left. So this piece right here, right off the bat, I already know that I can bake this detail. Now I can't exactly snap this because it's kind of angled in. So when I move it, it's going to kind of be like that. So I'm just going to press S, X, and then 0. And for some reason that's not working. Let's try changing this to median point. S, X, and then 0. That's interesting. This should be flattening. Maybe this is already flat and it's an optical illusion. My guess is this one's already flat, but it's actually this area that's not. So I think it was an optical illusion. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to make it easy. Delete these vertices. And then just Alt-Shift-Click on these ones. Yeah, I think it was just an optical illusion making me think that part was tilted when it wasn't. So same here, delete, fill these in, and then dissolve that. Super easy. Cool, so we could maybe decimate this portion down a bit. Let's start here and just kind of work our way down. Should be easy. Control X, cool. It's decent enough. And then right here, all the way around, Control X, cool. And also make sure you have the segment count set to 1 and keep sharp turned off. I'm going to go ahead and go in here, work on this real quick. And I think that's basically about it, really. So we'll go ahead and symmetrize, change this to symmetry, and there we go. That one's done. Awesome. All right, so now we have this little piece down here. That should be easy. One segment, keep sharp turned off, and that one was like a few clicks. That was easy. This one might be a little bit tricky just because of the nature of the booleans on this one. But first of all, I already know this can be baked, so I'm going to press the L key and then delete these vertices. And then I'm simply just going to snap this face right to here and then clean it. Then we can just go ahead and dissolve that. Cool. Not worried about the other side because we can simply symmetrize it. We could decimate these down a bit. The only issue with these is kind of where they terminate. We're going to have to kind of readjust this a little bit. So what I might do is Shift 1, which should meet them in the middle. And then this should be, let's try Shift 1 on that as well. So that way, it's kind of disturbing the curvature a little bit when I slide this. As you can see, when you slide this down, it kind of moves the curvature around. So, but the same thing happens with this one, so I just prefer to meet them in the middle, so it mitigates it on both sides. It's either you have a little bit worse shading on both, or a lot worse shading on one. So, in here, some of these vertices could be merged. Maybe this one could go here, right? And then this one could like merge into there. Could just do a little bit of basic cleanup, just to kind of see if it shades any better. We have this weird pool, so we can always turn off loop slide in the bevel. And also all these holes in here or rings, whatever, we can go ahead and dissolve out. I'm going to dissolve right up to this point because this one is actually helping the shading a bit. It's kind of mitigating it down here, I think. Well, these are already quads, so maybe we could even dissolve that one out. These I do not want to dissolve because the shading is simply just going to pull a lot further if I do that. But actually no, that one's fine because we don't need these. These aren't really contributing to the Boolean now, are they? So we can actually just remove all these loops going through here because these are not really contributing anything. I thought they were for a second, but they're actually not. And that shading is a lot better. Cool. There's a little bit of a pull right here. So what I'm going to do is, let me show you a cool trick. If you alt-click these faces here, you might just have to paint them. And then you go into edge mode, you can subdivide this and it should drop a loop down the middle. Maybe not. If it doesn't, make sure you deselect the outer edges here. Kind of like that. Same for the other side. Because you should just be able to subdivide it real quick, but that's not working like I expected. So what I'll do instead is just circle select these edges manually. And then watch this, if we subdivide it, we'll get a loop in there. And then what we can do is just alt-click that loop and slide it all the way to the back, and now that shading won't be pulling, so that's a lot better. A little bit tricky on that one, but not too bad. Let's set this to one segment and turn off the keep sharp. And then dissolve those out maybe. Get these as well. Get those. These. And these. And if we really wanted to, we could possibly Control Q. I guess my checker deselect didn't change. So checker deselect, and then you could, dissolve that one out a bit, but it's just going to mess with the shading too much. I'm not going to bother. Cool, so this one's good. I'm going to go ahead and clear out that middle loop. Make sure it's not going through that cylinder part. Control click down to there. And then to here. And that one's done. Cool. Now we also have this piece here. Go ahead and Control X these. This one should be easy. Looks like these vertices need to be merged here. So just be careful of that. And it still looks like we have, that's interesting, an interior face maybe. Not too sure what's causing this. It's interesting. It could be that this one has a mean bevel weight. Yeah, I think this dark line means that the mean bevel weight is just barely there. Because what happens when you use mean bevel weight, let me show you. As you turn this up, the line gets like from a really dark color up to a light blue color. So my guess is this one just had a little bit too much weight, because you can see this bevel is using the weight limit method. So the only areas getting beveled are the ones with the blue markings here. So just going to put that to 0. It looks like that fixes it. Same for this one. Okay, that fixed it. Same for these. I'm not sure why that happened. And we're just going to go in here. Dissolve all those out. What we could do is just resharpen it. If you press Q and then Control Shift click on sharpen, it'll recalculate the sharps again for you. And that should take care of those problems. For some reason that one didn't get caught. And then go up to here. Gonna go up to here. And then for this one, I'm just gonna paint it and then checker deselect, offset, and then dissolve it. Okay, I'm gonna go here. Let me save my scene. And then here, and then this hole we could honestly dissolve down a bit. Let's go ahead and symmetrize. And this is pretty good. We could even get rid of this little notch right here. No one's gonna really see it. So merge that there. Merge that there. Cool. And then just symmetrize that again. Awesome, so that one's good. We do have a little bit of some artifacting going on here. I'm guessing there's some extra geometry. Let me dissolve out that vertex. Interesting, let's just try, is there an edge right here? Yep, small edge. We'll just dissolve that one out. And we're still getting a little bit of overlap from this vertex, so we could either slide it a bit or just make the bevel smaller. I'm just gonna slide it. Cool, and then we can symmetrize that again. So really, you know, although the tools I showed you are pretty obvious, the only areas that get tricky are when you begin to have issues with the topology. So that's specifically why I wanted to make this video, so you could kind of see my approach. Okay, this right here, we could probably just leave this one alone. If you wanted to, you could come in and, you know, make it lower. It's just up to you. I don't want to make it too faceted, but it's not a super significant piece. Right here, same idea. Let's get rid of these little crevices like we did before. Can delete the vertices. And then bridge those edge loops. Same for here. And then simply dissolve them out. Cool. And then I'm just going to go through here. Awesome. Just make that a little bit lower poly. Looks good. Can hide that. And then this little lens right here. Oh, I forgot. Make sure you change this to one segment and then put your weighted normal on there. Okay, then this one right here we'll do... We honestly don't even need a bevel on this one. It's not doing anything. So we can just remove the bevel and weighted normal on that. And then just maybe... drop that down a bit. That looks good. Cool. Alright, so these screws here, I don't think we can really bake those onto anything. These are pretty important pieces, so we do have quite a mess of geometry on this piece though, as I can see. These pieces here could probably bake. On the high poly, we're going to have to make the bevels a bit smaller because they're overlapping, but these could definitely be baked. So what I'm going to do is maybe scale these up a bit. Well, first let's delete that, and maybe we could scale that up a bit. Also for the top of the screw, we could actually bake that detail as well. So what I could do is just clean up the top of the screw here, right? Delete those vertices, bridge these edge loops together. And yeah, and just kind of clean that up. Cool. And then what I'll do is just quickly dissolve this down just a bit more. And then just do a quick symmetry. Super easy. Awesome. Alright, so I'm just going to duplicate this one. Move it over. You could move the cursor over and snap it there. I'm just going to do this part manually. These are different sizes, so what I might need to do is just select the upper portion and then S, Shift Z. Is this going to be not worth my time, is it? I'll just do this one manually as well. Can snap this up, remove this crevice, and then just clean up this portion. I'm going to waste too much time trying to deal with that other nonsense. Okay, we'll go around here and then do a quick symmetry. Awesome. So we're just about done. I think we're just over an hour in video, which is a pretty decent time for this. And obviously, if I wasn't trying to teach, it would have been a lot quicker. So these screws here, I'm going to give them one segment as well. Make sure there's a weighted normal. One segment and then weighted normal. We're going to join this together, so it doesn't really matter. As long as the one you join it to has the one segment and weighted normal, it doesn't matter. I just always change the segment count and weighted normal just to reinforce a good habit. That's why I do it. Just turn off the keep sharp here, put that to one segment, and I don't know what's happening on this one. Interesting. Let me undo that. Looks like the bevel's not working for some reason, so let me just make a new bevel. Sometimes that happens. It's kind of weird. I'll turn off the harder normals and use a weighted normal instead, just to keep consistent. Okay, we're just about there. Now these little pieces here can be baked for sure, so we're just going to delete those and maybe scale that up just a bit, so that way it's kind of like covering where those would be. And then we're just going to take these areas and just patch it up, right? Bridge edge loops, Control X, Control X, and then just kind of hop around here. And then symmetrize. Cool. Now let's do, looks like we have a mirror, so that's good. And then we just drop a weighted normal. And we're not going to apply the mirror, we're going to leave that one. You could apply it, but we're going to, if you apply it, we're going to end up adding it back for the UV section later. It'll make sense once we get to the UVs and UV optimization, but I'm just going to leave this mirror for emphasis. Later on, you'll see what I mean when we get to the UV section. For now, we're just focusing on the decimation. That's the main goal. So maybe for this one, we could dissolve those. And then just hop in here. And boom, there we go. Let's change the segment count to 1, put a weighted normal. And that one's good. These pieces can be baked, so we'll simply delete that. Maybe scale this outer part up, so we could alt click these faces and then press Alt S, make that a little bit bigger. I'll just change this to 1 segment, weighted normal. Can decimate this down a bit. Cool. And then all we have left is this little piece of the scope right here. So a lot of edge loops for some reason. I'm just going to dissolve all of those out. Not sure why there's so many. Dissolve this one out. And we could also decimate that down a bit. If you go into any video game with a round surface, you're going to see most of them kind of have about this much faceted behavior. Anything more than that is kind of rare, depending on what it is. You might see like additional faceting, like even worse than that on like pipes and stuff, but this is generally the level that most games seem to be hitting. So do 1 segment with a weighted normal. I also need to do the inside here, so don't forget about the inside or it's not going to match. Then do a quick symmetry. Cool. Can hide that. And now we just have this lens. We can just remove the bevel and weighted normal on that one. And just do a little bit more dissolving. And there we go. That should be all of the pieces. So make sure you save. And let's just go ahead and take a look at this low poly weapon. So what we're going to do is press Alt H to unhide everything. And this is our official low poly. Let me go ahead, take a look at the triangle count. So the triangle count right now is 40,000. It was originally 490,000, over 10 times as much. Now 40,000 is still kind of high, but you have to consider every single piece on here has a bevel modifier. Now if I were to remove the bevels and just use pure hard edges with no bevels, there's a few things that would happen. One, the triangle count would at least cut in half, at least, that's my guess. And two, the hard edges wouldn't actually look very good when it comes to baking and texturing. So I always prefer to use a higher triangle count with bevels set to 1 segment, as opposed to a lower triangle count but no bevels at all. So although this number seems quite high, this is actually reasonable given every single thing on this weapon has a 1 segment bevel on it. Makes sense? And just to prove it to you, let me show you what would happen. What in the heck is this? Oh, actually this is a piece that's going to get baked on, so I can delete that. Cool. Alright, let me show you what would happen if we didn't have any bevels on it, just to show you. So what I could do, just real quick, just take a random piece here and remove the bevel and weighted normal. Select everything and then Control J. And just to give you an idea, you're going to see that triangle count actually cut in half because there's no longer any sort of bevel on it, right? But the whole entire weapon just looks a lot worse. So for, doubling the triangle count in this case is actually worth it to me just because it looks so much better with those bevels. So 19,000 tries for a gun like this without bevels is good, and roughly 40,000 with bevels is also quite good. And you could honestly keep trying to decimate this down. I can go into wireframe real quick with Alt-V, but you're going to see this is about as low poly as I'm going to get it. I mean, if you just look at this, like intuitively, you can see that there's not too much left I could really decimate in here. I mean, I could maybe work on the stock a bit more if I really wanted to. Like, you could just find additional areas like this and try to decimate it down a bit more. In that case, that was actually not a bad idea. And you could do things like that, but overall, I mean, they're not going to do too much extra, really. We did pretty much everything we could. So if you want, it's always a good idea to go back in here and just kind of see like what areas could you dissolve down more and what areas are, fine. And pretty much everything here is fine. One trick I use to search for areas that are way too high poly is areas that have like, notice as you zoom out, it gets like darker and darker, like the areas of the meshes. And as you zoom in, it kind of gets lighter and lighter. If you look for dense black areas, that kind of indicates a lot of more compact geometry, but it could also indicate just a small piece, right? So when you zoom in here, you're going to see that this is actually still quite a low poly piece, even though it looks a bit dense from a distance. So this is good. This is about as good as we're going to get. If you want to go back in and try to optimize it even more, be my guest, but we're probably not going to be able to get any more than maybe a couple thousand more triangles off the top line there. So this looks good. I'm happy with it, so I'm going to end the video here. Before the next video begins, I actually wanted to drop a short video in here real quick to clear up something that I see a lot. A lot of people, when they make game assets, they ask, what's a good poly count? Is 10,000 too much? Is 20,000 too much? It depends, right? There's no guideline you can really use. It's going to vary depending on who you're working for, who your client is. There's just a bunch of different requirements there. I'm going to show you my personal way to determine if your model is as low poly as you can get it. You need to stop worrying about what the poly count is and figure out if you've made it as low poly as you can. Because a really complex weapon or a complex character is obviously going to have way more polygons than, say, a glass bowl that you modeled in Blender, right? So the whole question regarding poly count, there's no real answer to that. The answer is to actually look at your model in wireframe and determine if it's as low poly as you can get it. Now the next video is going to show you the entire decimation process. I've already recorded it and I'm going to show you what the result looks like. So this is the high poly right here. Let me actually go into side view and turn on wireframe. So this is the high poly weapon and this is the low poly. See that? And actually I don't know what these are doing. Let me hide that real quick. So once again, high poly and low poly. Let's look at the difference in triangle count. The high poly has 490,000 tries and the low poly has about 38,000. This took me just about an hour to decimate into a low poly. It would have been quicker if I wasn't recording. So let me show you exactly how you determine what a good poly count is. Don't worry about the number down here. Worry about if this is as low poly as you can get it. And the way you do that is by simply going into wireframe mode. So with hard ops, you can just press Alt-V. Alternatively, you can go in here to viewport display and turn on wireframe. Just make sure you have it selected. Hard ops will just do it for every piece, which is easier. Okay, so the way I do it, once I've made my low poly, is I kind of pan around here. Now, like I said, the next video is going to show you the full process if you want to watch that. But what I do is I just kind of zoom in to these areas and I look and I think, is there any additional geometry I can A, either remove, or B, remove that's, we could bake in? Because there's some geometry you just don't need, and there's other geometry that you can just bake the detail into. And you're going to see I actually already noticed an issue right here as I was recording. I have some extra geometry here. This is a piece that was going to be big, so I can delete that out. But you're going to see, like, there's not too much left I could really do on this weapon. I mean, it's pretty empty. There's not too many additional bevels I could really make any lower. Maybe a little bit on this trigger, but I mean, honestly, this is about as low poly as I'm going to get it. You're going to see if I try to decimate, you know, this portion down anymore, it's just going to become a bit too... Actually, that was okay. Maybe I will leave that. But if I try to, like, decimate this down anymore, it's going to become a little bit too faceted, which I don't necessarily want. But, you know, there's certain areas you could always go back into and try to make it even lower, and you'll probably have some success. But you're going to see pretty much all of this is about as low poly as I can get away with. You know, the moment I start trying to maybe decimate this down even more is when we run into issues and just too much faceting. So all you need to do when you're making a low poly is look at your model and wireframe and think to yourself, is this about as low poly as I can get this? Just looking at it. That's all you're doing. You're looking at the model and just thinking to yourself, is there any additional work I could do to make this a bit lower poly? If the answer is no, you're probably good to go and you don't need to worry too much about the triangle count. If the answer is yes, then go back and try to optimize it a bit more. So my advice to you is stop worrying about what your poly count is and start worrying about, is this as low poly as I can make it just looking at the wireframe? That is the way you should be approaching it. By doing that, you're naturally going to get yourself the best polygon count for that specific model, okay? So I hope the video makes sense, and in the next one we're just going to hop into the full decimation process for this weapon. You don't have to watch it if you're comfortable with the techniques I already showed you, but it is there in case you're curious.